Hello, fourth graders. Today we will be talking through some more multiplicative comparisons. That's fun to say, multiplicative comparisons. Remember, that just means comparing numbers with a relationship where you multiply. So something is however many times is large. But today we'll do those with the lens of number stories. So let's warm up our problem solving brains. Please remind yourself of the steps to problem solving. Read these with me over here. 1, 2, 3. Read to understand, plan, solve, and then check. And remember, now with the plan, you could also consider having a letter to represent the unknown in your equation, as well as an equation with that unknown. So go ahead, pause the video, and I want you to try this do now. Play the video when you're ready to hear the answers. Welcome back. Let's discuss these. So problem number 1 said Linda sold 9 bookmarks and Paul sold 8 more than Linda. How many did Paul sell? So this is our question. I'll underline it. I went ahead and wrote that as an equation. I chose that his how many he sold was going to be B for bookmarks. And I said, well, 9 plus 8 more would be B, or 17 equals B. If you agree, give a woohoo. Awesome. So you maybe got 17 bookmarks as well. Okay, let's read the next one. Similar, but if you're reading carefully, you'd notice they're not exactly the same. Linda sold 9 bookmarks. Paul sold 8 times as many. How many did Paul sell? So again, my unknown is how many bookmarks Paul sold, but this time I took Linda's 9 and multiplied times 8 to get 72 bookmarks. If you agree with me, give a woohoo. Awesome. So I wasn't playing a trick on you. These weren't exactly the same problem. It wasn't a typo. There was a little difference here. And what was the difference? I didn't write this one because you could have said a variety of things. Maybe the first one you said Paul had sold 8 more than Linda, but in the second one, Paul had sold 8 times as many, right? These were a couple of the key words. 8 more versus 8 times. Or maybe you said in problem number 2, Paul sold several more bookmarks than he did in problem number 1, right? Because we know multiplying by 8 is going to give you a much bigger product than if you just added 8. That's going to be a smaller number. So there were a few possible answers for this one, number 3, but the big detail was in this one, we needed to add to solve, and in problem 2, we needed to multiply. Which brings me to my next distinction in our math vocabulary. We've been talking these past couple days about multiplicative comparisons. Say that again with me. Multiplicative comparisons. Obviously, that has that root word multiply in it. And those will often you'll hear how many times as much. That keyword to look for in number stories. Whereas you also have some additive comparisons. And this is going to focus on the question, how many more? Additive has the root word add, so that's your addition problems. So when Paul sold, what did it say? 9 more, 8 more bookmarks, and just said 8 more, that was an additive comparison. But when Paul sold 8 times as many, that was a multiplicative comparison number story. So now you get to be the teacher. Make up your own number stories. I want you to do one for each. Make sure one is additive, like the Paul selling 8 more, and then one is multiplicative, like 8 times as much. You don't have to use 8 though. It could be any story you want. It also doesn't have to be bookmarks. Maybe your story is about cupcakes or basketballs or fantasy football points. Totally up to you, but write one of each, and then write an equation with an unknown to represent the comparison you came up with. Go ahead, pause the video and write both your number stories. Play back when you're ready. Hope you had some fun coming up with your own number stories. Here are mine. And if you're in my class, you know we've been reading Pippi Longstocking for fun. So I was inspired by that book. And if you haven't read it before, it's a really funny, excellent book. Highly recommend. Okay, my additive comparison. Annika had one piece of cake at the party. Pippi Longstocking had 5 more pieces than Annika. How many pieces did Pippi have? And if I wanted to write an equation for that, do you know what it would be? I would do 1 plus 5 equals C for cake, maybe, or I could have done P for pieces, whatever makes sense to you. And so then I'd say 6 equals C, or she had 6 pieces. Okay, so that was my additive. Let's try it with my multiplicative. Annika had 2 pieces of cake at the party. I just mixed up my numbers a little bit to change it up. Pippi Longstocking had 5 times as many pieces. How many pieces did Pippi have? So this time I am going to say, do you know what I'll say? 2 times 5 equals C. So 10 equals C. So, woo, Pippi must have been hungry. She had 10 pieces of cake. And if you actually read Pippi Longstockings, you know that isn't even that surprising. Pippi actually sticks her entire face in the cream pie in one scene. So 10 pieces of cake is no big deal for Pippi. Okay, excellent. So we understand the distinction between those two. Now I just want to show you one more thing that will show up in your math journal. This is on page 55 of your math journal. If you want to pause and get that now, you can, or you can just take down these notes on your own paper. Either way, it's fine since we're just doing this one. But it's page 55, number 3 says complete the table. And let's do this one together. So first they give you a comparison statement, might be multiplicative, might be additive. Then you need to write the equation and you need to draw the diagram. So if the statement said 4 times as many as 7, if I just write 4 times 7, have I written an equation? If you said no, you are correct. Equations must have an equal sign. I hope you were screaming that at the video. Equations must have an equal sign, right? So I would have needed to write 4 times 7 equals, and then you can solve your basic fact. I like to think of that as double double. So I'm like 7 times 7 would be, 7 plus 7 would be 14, and then double 14 would give me 28. Okay. So we got that fact down. And now for my diagram. Now there are a few different ways to represent this, but what I'm going to do is it said 4 times as many as 7. So I'm going to draw a little box and label that 7. And then right below it, I'm going to draw that same box 4 times. That's the way I think to draw this diagram. Now you might visualize it differently. As long as you're showing 4 times 7, we'll accept all reasonable answers. I tried to make these as equal as possible because they're all supposed to be 7. And then this one was just plain 7, whereas this one was 28, right? Okay, so just wanted you to get a visual representation there. And that covers it for our comparisons. Have fun.